Hello, welcome to the self-learning platform by Dr. Sushma Singh. Today we start Unit 5, Niccolò Machiavelli. And today we are going to discuss the prince. The prince of Machiavelli is the product of the prevailing conditions of his time in his country, Italy. As such, it is not an academic tragedy or value oriented political philosophy. It is, in real sense, real politic. It is a memorandum on the art of government, is pragmatic in character, and provides technique of the fundamental principles of statecraft for a successful rulership. It deals with machinery of the government which the successful ruler could make use of. The whole argument of the prince is based on the two premises borrowed mainly from Aristotle. One of these is that the state is the highest form of human association and the most indispensable instrument for the promotion of human welfare, and that by merging himself in the state, the individual finds his fullest development, that is, his best self. Consideration of the welfare of the state therefore outweigh the consideration of individual or group welfare. The second premise is that material self is the most potent motive force in individual and public action. Machiavelli almost identifies the state with the ruler. These premises led him to the conclusion that the prince is the perfect embodiment of shrewdness and self control, who makes capital alike of his virtues and vices. This quality of the prince makes him worthy for successful seizure of power. According to Machiavelli, those things were virtuous in the prince which excelled in bringing success and power, and the virtue lay in functional excellence. These were ruthlessness, cunningness, deceitfulness, boldness, and shrewdness, along with unflinching will. Undoubtedly, this is an idealized picture of an Italian tyranny of the 16th century who has influenced Machiavelli's imagination. Chapter 18 of The Prince gives Machiavelli's idea of the virtues which a successful ruler must possess. Integrity may be theoretically better than collusion, but cunningness and subtlety are often useful. The two basic means of success for a prince are the judicious use of law and physical force. He must combine in himself rational as well as brutal characteristics, a combination of lion and fox. The prince must play the fox and act hypocrite to disguise his real motive and inclinations. He must be free from emotional disturbances and ready and capable of taking advantage of the emotions of others. He should be a cool and calculating opportunist and should oppose evil by evil. In the interest of the state, he should be prepared to sin boldly. Severity rather than mildness must characterize his attitude in public affairs, and the prince should aim to be feared than loved. But above all, he must keep his hands off the property and women of his subjects, because economic motives being the mainspring of human conduct, a prince must do all he can to keep his subject materially contented. A prince might execute a conspirator, but should not confiscate his property. To Machiavelli's preservation of state was raison d'etre of monarchy. Therefore, a prince must regard his neighbors as likely enemies and keep always on guard. A clever prince will attack the enemy before the latter is ready. He must be of unshakable purpose and dead to every sentiment except love for his state, which must be saved even at the cost of his own soul. He must not allow himself to be weighed down by any consideration of justice or injustice, good or bad, right or wrong, mercy or cruelty, honor or dishonor in matters of the state. According to Machiavelli's state actions were not to be judged by individual ethics. He prescribes double standard of conduct for statesmen and the private citizens. This aggregated notion of what a ruler and a state can do is perhaps because of Machiavelli's understanding of the problem that confronted a ruler amid the corruption of 16th century Italy. Thus, according to himself, a sheer political genius, a successful ruler had to create a military power to overcome the disorderly cities and principalities, and therefore the force behind the law must be the only power that holds society together. Moral obligations must be in the end of derived from law and government. The ruler is the creator of law as also of morality, for moral obligation must ultimately be sustained by law, and the ruler, as the creator of the state, is not only outside the law, but if the law enacts morals, he is outside morality as well. There is no standard to judge his acts except the success of his political expedients for enlarging and perpetuating the power of his state. It will be the ruin of the state if the ruler's public actions were to be weighed down by individual ethics, especially those which relate to internal and external security. Therefore, public and private standards were difficult. It was always wrong for an individual to commit crime, even to lie, but sometimes good and necessary for the ruler to do so in the interest of the state. Similarly, it is wrong for a private individual to kill, but not for the state to execute someone by way of punishment. The state hangs a murderer because public safety demands it. Public conduct, in fact, is neither inherently good nor bad. It is good if its results are good. A citizen acts for himself and as such is also responsible for his action, whereas the state acts for all, and therefore same principles of conduct could not be applied to both. The state has no ethics. It is a non-ethical entity. The state, being the highest form of human association, has supreme claim over man's obligations. This theory of Machiavelli gives supreme importance to the law given in society. The ruler, in order to prove his claim, must at the same time embrace every opportunity to develop his reputation. He must keep people busy with great enterprises, must surround all his actions with an air of grandeur, and must openly participate in the affairs of neighboring states. Besides, he must also pose as the patron of art, commerce, and agriculture, and should refrain from imposing burdensome taxation. To Machiavelli, the justice of state was in the interest of the sovereign, and the safety of state was the supreme law. One of the most important characteristics of Machiavelli's philosophy in the case of Prince was that he should aim at acquisition and extension of his princely powers and territories. If he fails to do this, he is bound to perish. For this, he should always regard his neighboring states as enemies and remain always prepared to attack them at some weak moment of theirs. For this, he must have a well trained citizens' solidarity. A good army of soldiers are in reality the essence of princely strength. Mercenary soldiers should be rid of, as they may become the cause of lawlessness. Such bands of hired ruffians would be ready to fight for the largest pay and could not be faithful to anyone. This could shake the authority of the prince. Therefore, the prince must possess a nationalized standard army of soldiers at his disposal. Now, the next point is Machiavelli's classification of forms of government. Machiavelli's classification of forms of government is rather unsystematic. The treatment of government in his two major works is significantly different, rather inconsistent, and contradictory to each other. The prince deals with monarchies or absolute governments, while the discourses showed his admiration for expanded Roman Republic. There was nothing in Machiavelli's account of absolute monarchy corresponding to his obviously sincere enthusiasm for the liberal and self-government of Roman Republic. In both forms, his emphasis is on the cardinal principle of the preservation of the state as distinct from its foundlings depends upon the excellence of its law. For this is the source of all civic virtues of its citizens. Even in a monarchy, the prime condition of stable government is that it should be regulated by law. Thus, Machiavelli insisted upon the need for legal remedies against official abuses in order to prevent illegal violence. He pointed out the political danger of lawlessness in rulers and folly of vexation and harassing policies. Both the books shows equally the qualities for which Machiavelli has been specially known, such as indifference to the use of immoral means for political purpose and belief that government depend largely on force and craft. Machiavelli never erected his belief in the omnipotent law given into a general theory of absolutism. However, what does not appear in the prince is his genuine enthusiasm for popular government of the sort exemplified in the Roman Republic, but which he believed to be impractical in Italy when he wrote. Both the books present aspects of the same subject, the cause of the rise and decline of states and the means by which statesmen could make them permanent. This corresponds to twofold classification of states or form of government. The stability and preservation of state is the prime objective of the ruler. Machiavelli flavored a gentle rule wherever possible and the use of severity only in moderation. He believed explicitly that government is more stable where it is shared by many. He preferred election to heredity as a mode of choosing rulers. He also spoke the general freedom to purpose measures for the public good and for liberty of discussion before reaching a decision. He, in his discourses, expressed that public must be independent and strong because there is no way to make them suitable without giving them the means of rebellion. He had a high opinion both of virtue and the judgment of an uncorrupted people as compared to those of the prince. These observations only show the conflicting and contradictory ideas of Machiavelli's philosophy. On one hand, he advocates an absolute monarchy, and on the other, shows his admiration for a republic. As Sabine remarks, his judgment was swayed by true admirations for the resourceful despot and for the free self-governing people, which were not consistent. He patched the two together rather precariously as the theories respectively of founding a state and of preserving it after it is founded. In more modern terms, it might be said that he had one theory for revolution, and another for government. Obviously, he recommended despotism, mainly for reforming a corrupt state and preserving its security. However, he believed that state can be made permanent only if the people are admitted to some share in the government, and if the prince conducts the ordinary business of the state in accordance with law and with a due regard for the property and rights of his subjects. Despotic violence is a powerful political medicine needed in corrupt states and for special contingencies, but it is still a poison which must be used with the great caution. Here we want to wind up this lecture. Thank you so much for your attention.